Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Tuesday, November 19th, 2019. And here are your top stories. Robo-advisors will not take over the wealth management industry, and a Netflix password crackdown. It's Tech Tuesday, a look at the intersection between finance and technology. And who better to join us to talk about this? Daniel Klein, Senior Technology and Consumer Products Reporter with The Motley Fool. Happy Tuesday, Daniel.
Oh, thanks, Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. It's getting a little brisk here in the Northeast, but I think based on you living in Florida, you probably don't get that as much.
So if you're north in Florida, supposedly they're getting frost and things they're completely unprepared for. But here in southern Florida, everyone's kind of freaked out because it might get down to the mid-70s.
Okay, well, that's horrible. Hope you're prepared. So let's jump right into it. As I said at the leadoff on the show, MIT just released a report. An expert from MIT just released a report about robo-advisors. And I want to get you to weigh in on this because I know that you have an interesting perspective. You do use financial advice online and with somebody else. So why don't you weigh in on this?
Yeah, so basically what this report came out and said is that robo-advisors can never fully replace real advisors because of the trust factor. Because eventually, if you were my financial advisor, you might have told me something 6 months down the road. I might go, oh my God, that saved me money. That made me money. And that's not something sort of that can organically happen with a robot. So again, I believe robo-advisors have a place. They can sort of tell you how you've allocated your money, if you've made mistakes. What they can't tell you is, hey, this might be the right stock for you, but geesh, I don't want to own that. That's a company my values aren't in line with. Mm-hmm. Or, all right, you're telling me Starbucks is a company I should own, but boy, I get my coffee at Pete's. I don't really align with sort of what they're doing. That's not true in my case. I'm a Starbucks fan, but you understand the gist of it. There's a human piece of it that, of course, AI can eventually pick up some of that.
Right.
But I don't think you'll ever trust a robo-advisor, no matter how advanced it is, as much as you trust a human. And part of that is, I think we're more forgiving if a human makes a mistake.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I think that, and I echo your sentiment. I think there's a place for both AI or robo-advisors and also financial advisors. And I agree. I think being able to talk to a live human person, to be able to express how you feel, because feelings are important in addition to the quantitative aspects of managing money, very important. And we talked last week about artificial intelligence with the trucking industry, and I think you made some really astute points in that. And there will be some jobs that go away, but new jobs will be created. I think in the financial services industry, in particular with robo-advisors, they definitely have a place in the future. They will improve. But I also think that the AI and the programming is not there yet. Am I right about that?
Yeah, look, I think what we're seeing is your personal ability to know where your money is, what your money is doing, and what it might look like in 30 years. That's absolutely more advanced than it's ever been, and it's going to get better. So we run stories at the Motley Fool like, what would happen if you spent $1,000 on this company's IPO and now it's 20 years later, here's what it would be worth. But you'll actually be able to really easily run those models. So if you decide like, hey, you know what, the next hot company to IPO, I really love that brand. I'm going to spend $1,000 and buy a few shares. Well, what would that have to do over a 10-year period to justify taking that out of, say, a traditional safe investment, a Microsoft, a blue chip stock that pays a dividend? So you could really weigh the pros and cons. And now, like when you go in and program your 401k, you might be able to pick like, I'm young, so be very risky. I'm close to retirement, so be cautious. You're going to get much more fine-tuning and a larger understanding of what you're buying, and maybe more of an ability to say, like, you know what? I don't want to invest in any company that pollutes. I don't want to invest in any company that does things that don't align with my values. It might be any company that sells meat or any company that doesn't sell meat. It really depends on your values. And that's where the robots are going to help. They're going to give us an ability to sort of process things that would be challenging for a human.
Yeah, I do think that you made the point, I think jokingly, about the 401k, and I think that model that is very antiquated, needs to be updated. Let me flip it around though, Daniel. Financial advisors, those that you know this industry well because you've covered it for a long time. Are they ready to step up to the plate and adopt new technology and to incorporate that into their business model and into what they do day to day?
So it depends who you're talking to. Like many of my colleagues who have CFAs and I don't know all the degrees, but various certifications so they can manage money. They have the ability to integrate technology because it's a native part of their life. Anybody under 35 who's moving into financial planning or stocks or any of that sort of area, they have held a phone in their hand for their entire adult life. So they're going to know what's out there. They're going to use those tools. I would think that if you work for a big firm, chances are those tools are available. And if you're not comfortable using them, there's probably someone who's 28 in your division who knows how to do it. That said, I do see an older generation of, quote, accountants who are very rigid, who don't sort of know how to play the loopholes, don't know how to do some of the games. And you have to check, is my advisor, is the person I'm working with staying current? And that might not mean using AI to help you figure out stuff, but are they reading? Are they on top of things? You can replace the AI work with legwork, but are they doing that legwork? Do they have all the things available to them? I see sometimes with various people I talk to that have used the same person year after year after year, and that person maybe isn't staying up to date on the codes and some of the rules. So you really want to put it to that test. I mean, we've all done it. You look at your portfolio and go like, why did I have 20% of my portfolio sitting here in this area that's been languishing forever? It's something you personally have to look at, not obsessively, maybe twice a year. If you're closer to retirement, maybe 3 or 4 times a year. And it's just to make those tweaks or to ask the question, hey, I've got 20% of my money in municipal bonds. Why is that? Wouldn't that be better off in tech stocks? And the answer might be yes, it might be no.
And when we come back, Netflix's CEO indicates that they're going to crack down on password sharing. What does that mean to you? And what does it mean to the streaming industry? Stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network. Welcome back. Netflix's CEO indicated that there may be a crackdown on password sharing between family and friends. What's this all mean? Well, Daniel Klein from The Motley Fool is with us. Dan, thanks so much for sticking around with us this morning.
Thanks for keeping me.
Well, you're a wealth of knowledge and a very important part to this telecast. So let's talk about Netflix. And the co-founder recently said that there might be a crackdown on passwords. Why don't you give us a skinny on this?
Yeah. So one of the sort of secrets that everyone knows is that Netflix passwords are shared. And technically, you're allowed to share a password within your household, meaning I live with my wife and my son. You're allowed to have 2 streams at a time. If I'm traveling, I could watch Netflix. So could my wife. The reality is, in theory, for legal reasons, I may or may not also share my password with my mother. And my mother uses my Netflix password generally at different times of night than we do. And it's a little silly because Netflix is only $11 a month, which we can well afford. Actually, T-Mobile pays for most of my Netflix.
Right.
And the reality is, Netflix has sort of looked the other way on this. And one possible form of revenue is for them to do some very simple, checking to see who's logging in, who's using your password. If I'm logged in using my email in 2 locations, that is probably an issue, even though the reality is my wife and I could be in separate locations. But what happens if a third and a fourth pop up? And I guess Netflix doesn't know how many people are in my household, but there are some things they could do. And if they put it in even a simple effort to crack down on this, it could result in some people either losing access or having to get their own account, which in theory would be good for Netflix.
Yeah, I wonder what the trade-off would be, right? Because doing something like that, I mean, I can understand sharing it among family, and my wife and I share our Netflix or her Netflix account, but we don't share it outside of our immediate family. But I wonder if it would turn some people off. Now I don't, not advocating for giving it to all the friends on your block, but I wonder if it would turn some people off, and would those people actually become subscribers, or would they go to something like Disney Plus, Dan?
Yeah, so I think you have to do sort of what Apple does. So my mom is on my Apple Music account legally. In order to have her on that account, I have to give her the access to be able to download things that could cost money. So while she wouldn't do that, though she could inadvertently do that, it's someone you trust. So if Netflix put in some sort of system, and there are no extras or bells and whistles, but if they came up with some sort of way that the trust had to be mutual, they might go to a $13.99 family account that you're allowed to share with extended family or even friends, but it has to be someone you trust well enough with your credit card or whatever it is. I'm not sure what the exact rule is, because if they crack down and it was someone who was just occasionally logging in to, watch 1 or 2 things, I think there will be ill will. And really, I do think with the launch of Disney Plus, this is the first time Netflix's US customers are maybe thinking like, geez, could I take a break for 3 months while I watch The Mandalorian and some of the Marvel shows and some of the stuff that's going to be on Disney Plus? And you might see a savvy consumer who bounces between things. That's why I think you are going to see more things like Disney is doing, where they offer you a deal if you commit for a year. So Netflix might change its pricing.
Well, Dan, I certainly think that, services like streaming services like Disney Plus obviously are now new competition for Netflix. They're probably a little concerned about that and kind of gearing up for that. But let's talk for a minute about streaming in general, because I know you wanted to weigh in on this. We've talked about it on the program before with Disney Plus and some of the other services. How do you buy them, et cetera? But this is really the future. I mean, the cable is very passé, right?
Yeah, so this is going to be a case of people getting what they wanted and maybe not being so happy about it. Because cable made a mistake in that prices kept going up and up and up, and they kept launching channels that would cost you as a consumer maybe a nickel, maybe 10 cents, and that channel existed collecting 7 cents, 8 cents, whatever it is from the cable companies. But if you're a fan of one of those niche channels, my example is I like the Cooking Network. My wife and I watch a lot of that. Well, the Food Network will probably survive. It could probably even work as a standalone channel that people would pay for. The Cooking Network is maybe a little too niche, and as the cable universe shrinks, and it's shrinking very quickly, about 3 million people in the last 6 months after losing 3 million last year, you're going to see pressure on those lesser channels. And the cable company's saying, I'm not going to pay for this, or the numbers are going to get low enough that they're not going to be able to survive on a mix of those carriage fees and ad revenue. So yes, you're getting all sorts of new choices with Disney Plus and Hulu, and you're going to get Peacock from NBC and CBS All Access and DC Universe and HBO Max, but you're going to have to pick and choose which of these, or else you're going to be spending the same amount of money and have less stuff.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I don't think people are buying all the above that you mentioned. And I know Netflix spent several $1 billion on new content because they need to do that when competing with the likes of Disney. But I got to think that Disney does have the edge. Disney is a film studio. They have, they're a well-known brand, right? I mean, they definitely would have the edge, in my opinion, just from the outside looking in as a layperson.
Intellectual property gives Disney an advantage no other company will have. HBO doesn't have it.
Nope.
CBS doesn't have it. No, even Comcast with NBC won't have it. So you're going to be in a position where Disney can launch something that will very quickly scale to something rivaling Netflix. But the reality is Netflix has so much content, and it has diverse content. Disney is going to be PG-13 with maybe the occasional R-rated movie. Netflix has everything. It has a big selection of horror films. It has a huge selection of documentaries. So I'm not at all worried about Netflix. I am worried about anything that isn't Disney or Netflix.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the two behemoths kind of battling it out. And good point by you in terms of the fact that you're right, Netflix is going to have some of those R-rated PG-13 movies, et cetera, that maybe Disney will not have. But certainly going to be interesting to watch and see how this kind of transpires and how it actually transforms our society a bit further. Dan, always a pleasure chatting with you on a Tuesday morning. Hope you enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll talk to you later in the week on the podcast. Take care.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found it helpful as you plan for your financial future. Hey, have a financial topic or someone of interest that you think we should interview? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, and more, check out today's edition of The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.